Hello again, this is part two of the February recording. The first part ended up going on a bit long, so I thought I'd cut this into two as I continue to go through my pictures from Raja Ampat and the Cayman Islands on recent trips. And I'd reviewed the Raja Ampat ones in the first part of this video, and I thought I'd carry on and finish with the Cayman ones. The first shot though is not from either place, it's actually from the UK, just taken on on the beach here in the UK. It's a puffin that had died and was on the beach. I would think probably died from bird flu. There were several birds washed up, and that would be the most likely cause this year, particularly of why this puffin's like this. So just a photo on the beach. I think it's important to record these things and have those pictures available. I think the remainder of the images are from Cayman, and they're all taken with the Sony A7R5, except for this photo, which was taken with my Nikon because I wanted the extra reach of the lens that I had with that. The Sony, the only macro lens is really the 90mm, and this was shot with a 150mm Sigma on the D850. I find with these, when they're mouth brooding, these jawfish, if you can get very close to them with any lens, but they'll tend to retreat back into the burrow, and then you have pictures of them with their eggs, but with them sort of cowering in their burrow. And I really like shots of them with their eggs, but when they're swimming. And usually then using a longer lens is better for that because it gives you that ability to sit off them and get that behaviour. And then you're waiting for that moment when they really spit the eggs out a bit, so you can really get this whole mouthful of eggs, rather than if the mouth isn't completely open, you just see the eggs through the half-open mouth. This is a blenny that lives in a tube sometimes. I think it's got eggs inside the tube. It's a red-lipped blenny in the Caribbean. They're very characterful little fish. And this was shot with the WWL1 with the 28-60mm on the Sony. And this is zoomed in. And this is a fairly standard shot, but it was actually very difficult to take because it was incredible. It was really quite surgy on this day, and we were both flying backwards and forwards taking these pictures, both me and Sam, who's in the picture. And so what should be a very simple shot to take was actually very difficult to take, but that doesn't matter in the end result. The end result just is that I like the shot, the relationship of the diver and this little fish. Just a nice way of telling his story. This is a blue striped grunt doing its mouth yawning behaviour. They do this both as sort of to settle territorial battles or to attract cleaners, to clean them. And I think this one was doing that to a passing Spanish hogfish. This is Sam and a dog snapper on the kittiwake. And this is the big Goliath grouper that is, or medium size but big, still very big fish. Goliath grouper that's taken up residence on the kittiwake and seems to be there more and more reliably, which is great. And I really hope this fish stays there and grows and gives us a great opportunity to photograph it down the years. I think that'll add a huge amount of fun to the kittiwake dives, is having this big fish there and posing in different places around the wreck. This is Sam swimming down one of the staircases inside the wreck. As I've mentioned before, the photography inside the kittiwake is much more challenging these days. Now she's really over on her side because you end up at really quite awkward angles because the floor is, I would say, 80% tipped over. So it's almost horizontal, but not, so the walls are almost horizontal, and the floors are almost vertical, but not quite. So it makes both shooting and posing inside the wreck very awkward because the rooms don't line up in either direction to gravity in the way that you're facing and swimming. So we often end up sort of posing them at slightly funny angles so that everything kind of looks reasonably nice in terms of the composition. A wide angle scene. This is a favourite scene of mine on the Babylon dive site, swimming the opposite way from the pinnacle. And I photographed this on most workshop trips. I really like this little sponge formation. It was nicer probably 4 or 5 years ago because the red rope sponges at the bottom of the frame were much taller, and that really made it very, very pretty. Since then, these branching tube sponges, which are the ones at the bottom here, the yellowy ones, they have grown quite a bit, which has helped. And I think the brown tube sponge is very nice. But what makes this such a nice formation to shoot is the outcrop behind it. That's got such a lovely profile to it, and it's got the sea fans on top of it. So it really creates a very complete image. And this was taken with the fisheye lens on the Sony. Another shot from Babylon, but this time with the macro lens of this arrow crab inside a sponge. One thing I've noticed when processing this, not when shooting it, is that there are a lot of very small little glassy shrimps inside here. You can't see, they're not really in focus. I didn't know they were there at the time, but there's 1, 2 there. There's another one up here in this corner here. And I don't know what type of shrimp they are, so I think next time I'm in Cayman, I'll have a good look in these barrel sponges and see if I can see what those shrimps are, and hopefully get some nice shots of them. Another brown tube sponge here, this one with Sam swimming over it. This is another WWL shot, so I just processed it out to have a bit more variety, and also taken with those experimental or those prototype flashes. And this is an inward lighting shot taken at one of my favourite dive sites, which is Anchor Point, which is a lovely wide angle site. But this is sort of a very extreme inward lighting shot, so more from a teaching point of view, I think. But I like the effect. Next up, this is still at Anchor Point, actually, same dive. This is the sort of the sea fan rich scenery that's on the top of the wall there, and that's why I like the site. It's just so full of life, and there's nearly always quite a lot of schooling fish above it as well, with schooling Creole wrasse. In this case here, we've got a diver swimming above it to create the image. And I think these were shots I wanted to do with the Sony to test out how I felt the EVF was performing, the electronic viewfinder, because these are the types of shots that previous electronic viewfinders have really struggled with, in that it's very hard to see both the detail in the reef and the detail in the looking up towards the sun and where the diver is, to get both elements of your composition working, because the electronic viewfinders weren't really able to show you that dynamic range. And this is one of those shots that for me really proved that actually the strides that the camera companies have made, particularly Sony have made with these cameras, is really exciting, that you can now get both those elements. This, as you can see, is a long-snouted seahorse. They don't have particularly long-snouted, but they're called that in the Caribbean to differentiate reed seahorse from the other species of seahorse, because this one has a slightly longer nose. Nice orange colour. Don't get seahorses that regularly in Cayman, so I'm always happy to get a photo of one here attached to this green finger sponge, which is sort of a classic shallow water sort of sponge species. A cardinal fish inside a dead sponge that was lying on the seabed out on the algae patch at Macabuca, for those that know Cayman diving, which is a favourite critter hunting spot, and this conch that was also out on the sand there. I'm not sure this is a queen conch, but I don't know how to identify it, so I've just got it down as a conch in my IDs. And then finish off with a couple of kittiwake images. This is a photo of Sam on the kittiwake and some passing diver behind that I rather like, who wasn't posing for my picture and was busy doing their own thing, but I really quite like having them in the background. It helps tell the story of the wreck and the fact that there are people exploring and enjoying it. This used to be an old staircase inside the upper level of the engine room in the kittiwake, but the slats of the stairs are now long gone. And I photographed it quite a lot when the slats were all there, so it's nice for my sort of time series images as well. And it's just a sort of standard shot of Sam swimming through that in the image. This is the bow of the kittiwake. This was one of the setup shots we did on the first week of the workshop, and Hunter is modelling here. Hunter actually had never done modelling for us on before, and normally I ask whoever's the captain of our boat during the workshop to be the model for this shot on the kittiwake. It's just kind of a bit of a tradition, really, that whoever's captain gets to do this on that particular week. And Hunter hadn't been captain before for us on this day, on a kittiwake day. So this is his first time doing the modelling, and he was actually very, very good. He's obviously, like all the dive staff, he's very good in the water. But actually he modelled really, really well, and it really helped everyone's pictures, because he sort of took it really seriously, and I think his engagement that you get from his body language really just helps set up the shot. And it's, we usually, for doing these shots, we do them in the afternoon when the sunlight is on the bow of the kittiwake, and I always ask the captains just to hover over these two posts on the wreck here, and that's just really because it gives them a nice easy spot to hover with. And then I asked them to look back towards the photographers, so they end up with an eye line looking up the wreck, and it just creates a nice engagement of a diver exploring the wreck. They're nice and small in the frame, so it's still just a wreck shot. You've got the diver there, and they just hover there. But I think Hunter managed to not look like he was just hovering. He sort of kept his legs in positions that looked like he was actually exploring the wreck, not just being asked to model on the wreck, which I think really helps the picture. The kittiwake's slowly gathering more and more life. There's quite a lot of sponge growth now growing on the front. You see these yellow tube sponges here. There's a pink vase sponge there. There's some more yellow tube sponges up here. More yellow tube sponges back there. These are branching tube sponges. So there's more and more growth coming on. It obviously, because it's shallow, it's in an algae range. It's not colonized super fast. It doesn't have big currents in this area, so you don't tend to get really fast growth. But the growth is coming down there. You see there's brain corals and things growing on it, and these are, 12, 13 years old now with the age of the wreck, 12 years old. No, 11 years old. So, no, 23 to 11. Yeah, 12 years old. Now with the wreck, you can see how much they've grown. So it's also nice to see how quickly things grow. And a lot of these sponges are 2-3 years old, and they're growing to that sort of size. So it's good for your education as well, watching how the wreck changes down the years. But this is a setup shot we do, and what we do on the workshop is get the dive guide posing in this place, and then just take it in turns to swim forward and have this prime position, so you can get this nice clean composition with no other divers in the picture. So because all our divers are behind the camera here, and that allows us to get these nice clean shots without bubble trails in the background or anything like that. And then finally, I think this is the last picture, isn't it? Yeah. Oh no, yeah, let's go back to it. Yeah, so finally for me is this arrow blenny, which in the olden days I probably would have deleted this picture because it's not a particularly special picture of an arrow blenny. I quite like it's kind of this low-key effect. It's quite a dark image with sort of rich, warm colours in it with the reds and reds and oranges in the frame. But the reason this picture is important to me is arrow blennies have always been one of my favourite Caribbean critters to photograph. And were always very common on many of the dive sites that we use on the workshop for photography. So they were a nice, reliable subject. And coincidentally or not, at about the same time that lionfish arrived in the Cayman Islands, they went from critters that were a nailed-on certainty on those sites year after year after year to suddenly being absent. And on one of the main workshop sites that I must dive, 8-10 times each year during the workshops every single year, I've not seen an arrow blenny on that site in all those sort of 10-12 years since the lionfish arrived, or no, 12-14 years since the lionfish arrived, until this trip. And there was a pair of arrow blennies that I found, so I was really happy to see them back on this site. Lionfish numbers have definitely reduced. They seem to have found a bit more of an equilibrium in the Caribbean. They're certainly not creating plague numbers in Cayman like they perhaps were in the early years, and they do seem to, I think maybe some of the species have learned to predate on them when they're young, and that's controlling the population size. And then with some hunting still going on, I think the number of adults is relatively low as well. So there does seem to be some reasonable good news on the lionfish side. It's not a battle that's been won, but I think it does seem that the battle is under control. And anyway, maybe it's related, maybe it's not, but it was great to see arrow blennies back, and I would be very happy if these become a feature of the workshops again, because they're one of the coolest blennies in the world, and they're definitely one of my favourite Caribbean subjects. Right, sorry this was such a long one today, but I have broken it into 2 parts, and hopefully that was an interesting run through of the images that I've processed this week. It was quite a busy week for image processing. We announced UPY this week, and I've sort of been processing images as a break from all that work that goes along with that. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.